Hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents podcast, where we talk about how to build wealth like the 1%. So we're super excited today to have Mr. Phil Johnson on our show. He is one of those tremendous individuals that just has so much time, effort, and energy. A lot of his cycles today on emotional intelligence, and man, published author 6 to 8 times over. Has been an executive coach for 21 plus years, world traveler, is an amazing individual. I don't want to take anything away from his introduction, but we're super excited that he's here. So Phil, just want to say thank you, first of all, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, Abel, it's my pleasure. It's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you very much for carving out the time for us. So in your own words, maybe we can start here. I know I cut this introduction short because you've done some tremendous, amazing things over the past, years of your life, and the last, latest 20-year run as an executive coach and really focusing on emotional intelligence. Let me turn it over to you. In your own words, please tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll just start a great conversation here.
I'm an executive coach. I guess that's a title, but I really help individuals and organizations get better results by developing their emotional intelligence. So I'm kind of like like a Sherpa, taking people on the journey to develop their emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you haven't really read up or know this subject, you're in for a treat, because there is IQ and there is EQ. Someone can be very, very intelligent, book smarts, data points, metrics analysis, numbers, however you want to look at it, and very highly skilled in one area. That's IQ. EQ, emotional, really the intelligence part of it is really the part that I'm so fascinated and so excited that Phil's here. So Phil, let's start here. What is emotional intelligence?
Very simply, a very simple way to understand emotional intelligence is it's the ability to feel the fear and anxiety that change creates in us and move through it towards what we're trying to achieve, as opposed to allowing that fear to keep us trapped in our comfort zones.
Got it. Yeah, that fear and anxiety. If you're an investor and you're on our show right now, anytime you have a big deal, a new investment, a good amount of money in your pocket, and you're trying to figure out, where do I deploy it next? That fear, that anxiety, that worry, that doubt, that a lot of times will prevent someone from moving forward, either on the right thing, or potentially cause a hasty decision on the wrong thing. So I think either one of those scales. This is exactly why I wanted Phil, on the show. So yeah, that makes sense. You understand it, what to do and what to process it. So as we know what emotional intelligence is, tell us a little bit about how you came across this particular area of expertise. Why did you choose emotional intelligence? And maybe we can start here.
Well, that's a great question. I don't know whether I chose it so much, but I've been on this path for the last 54 years, long before the term emotional intelligence was ever coined. I'm 68, but I was born with dyslexia. And because my brain doesn't work the way most people's brains work, it forced me to do a lot of what I now refer to as emotional labor. And that's helped me. That's given me a perspective on myself and other people that helps me to help them to achieve better results. Think of it like a blind person that develops great hearing as a compensation. I started working on what's now referred to as emotional intelligence at a very early age as a compensation for my dyslexia.
Got it. Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So that it kind of came. It sounds very organic,
Yeah,
Phil. That's number one.
yeah,
Like you said, it was almost forced upon you, and then, man, that led you to doing what you're doing now, huh? Helping others.
yep. It
So
yeah,
go ahead.
it had a major impact in the success I've had in my life and my career, um, both in within corporations and in my own business.
Yeah,
Um,
and if
and to be quite honest with you, I if I hadn't had the good fortune of being born with dyslexia, by the way, back in those days, there was no such thing as dyslexia or
mm,
ADD or ADHD. I was
mhm.
just labeled a slow learner. But looking back on, and I didn't realize I had the condition until about 35 years ago. But if I hadn't been born with dyslexia, I would not very likely have been willing to do the emotional labor that the development of emotional intelligence requires.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, that these things weren't quite put into a disorder or I don't even know the words for it. There was no label for it back then, like you said. To like today, okay, doctor says, "Oh, you have dyslexia. This is what happens," and in your mind versus someone else's, and like, "Oh, yeah, okay, we know it today. That's a hardship that somebody has to work through." That so that emotional labor is what you had to figure out on your own through that. So just maybe you can describe that a little bit and how it works into what you do today.
Well, um, there are three think of emotional labor, think of the development of emotional intelligence as going to the dentist. Nobody would ever go to a dentist unless they were either in pain or trying to avoid pain. And I guarantee you,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
nobody would develop their emotional intelligence unless they had an urgent desire for better results. See, there's only two sources of motivation that will cause us to leave our comfort zone. One is pain, the other one is passion, and hardly anybody's connected with their passion. So for the most part, the executives and organizations I work with, their primary motivation for working with me is pain. They have an urgent desire for better results than they're currently getting, and they need help to achieve those results. So that's where the journey begins. Um, Now, I've also made the statement that emotional intelligence is going to become the development of emotional intelligence is going to become a multi-trillion dollar industry. And the reason for that is because we're facing a tsunami of change. Change is increasing at an exponential rate. Some scientists estimate that in this century, we could experience roughly the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change. And we've got a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. So let me give you an example. So there's a part of our brain called the amygdala that for the last 500 million years has been trying to keep us safe and alive by making sure we never leave our cave, we never leave our comfort zone.
yeah, yeah.
And if we do, it automatically secretes a hormone into our bloodstream called cortisol. And that causes the executive center of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, to shut off. And we go into what psychologists refer to as an amygdala hijack. We go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Some people run away. Some people freeze like a deer in the headlights. Some people lash out. So when that happens in conflict situations, it can cause people to die. It can create that drama and chaos. In business or personal situations, relationships die. We burn trust. So, as an analogy, if you think of your amygdala as a very frightened 4-year-old child, The development of our emotional intelligence acts like a big brother or a big sister to quiet the amygdala response down and better enable us to feel the fear and anxiety that change always creates in us and move through it towards our desired result, as opposed to allowing that anxiety to trap us in our comfort zone. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And as I'm listening to you, I've heard this more than, more than a few times, right? Exactly what you're talking about, maybe said in different words and in different contexts, but ultimately it's the same. It's you've got some things wired in our brain. For my layman understanding, we've got some things wired in our brain that's like, hey, a caveman, I think is a great analogy. Well, back then, before we were thinking about money or investment or anything like that, I was just like, don't die. And my brain is wired for, hey, there's something that could kill me. I better, figure out how to work through it. And in my today's modern, life, there is no, big saber-toothed tiger that I have to worry about, killing today or coming out of the cave. But man, I could lose my job. I could, uncertain how to invest the right dollar amount or where my, my income is going to come from next year. Something's going to happen. So that flight or fight or freeze, either one of those is something that we're facing today, no matter what. So, man, in this mindset, maybe you could help us. For the investors that are listening right now, they've got to figure out, what to do next, how to do it. They're facing, turmoil with interest rates, the economy, what's going to happen. How can you give them some, some insider advice of what you just said, just kind of related to that investor mind? How do they work through all those emotions?
The development of our emotional intelligence enables us to become more present and stop worrying. Worrying has no value. Worrying is practicing fear in advance. So it's a complete waste of our energy to worry. So by developing your emotional intelligence, it enables you to look at situations more objectively without fear, without worry. And that helps you to turn those challenges into opportunities for better results. See, when you're consumed by fear, you're no longer conscious. You're in reactive mode. You're no longer looking to be creative. You're no longer looking for the opportunities that the challenges may create. You're in survival mode. So the development of your emotional intelligence enables you to look at the challenges as opportunities for better results, which they are. And without the emotional intelligence, you miss those opportunities because you're consumed with fear and worry.
Yes.
Let me give you an example of a company that's currently doing over $1 trillion a year in annual revenue.
Please.
And their primary focus in hiring is the search for people with above average levels of emotional intelligence. And when I tell you who the company is, you'll recognize it, and you'll start to recognize the kind of environment that their people have created. And that company is Apple. When you walk into an Apple store, that energy you feel is an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. They're not trying to sell you anything. They want you to have a great experience. They want to understand your pain, and if possible, offer a solution. But whether you buy anything or not is secondary to their desire to want to serve you. They want you to have a great experience. Maybe you'll go tell your friends and they'll tell their friends. So when you reflect on the energy in that environment, that energy is very different from the energy of the companies surrounding those stores. So that by developing your emotional intelligence, you're able to create a level of trust that leads to far greater results. If Apple wanted to get into banking and they know nothing about banking, they'd probably have over 10 million depositors overnight because of the level of trust that their people have created. They know that even though Apple doesn't know anything about banking, if they decide to get into it, they'll figure it out and they'll do very well at it. So that's an example of the value and importance of developing emotional intelligence, especially during the time we live in of rapidly accelerating change. See, we're all, because of our biology primarily, we're all experiencing low-grade amygdala hijacks every day. And the development of our emotional intelligence is the solution that will enable us to turn the challenges we face into opportunities for better results.
Yeah, I love it. So on this part, it's for me personally. I'm kind of thinking about everything you're saying. I'm trying to be as quiet as possible and listen. My mind's still going and thinking about, the next question, what do I ask Phil, and this and that, on this side of it. But really, I stopped to think about exactly what you just said. There are so many forces that are saying, keeping me distracted, keeping me about a worry, thinking about something that has no, there's no control within it today, right now. And then I start to worry and think about it in my own mind. And I'm like, oh, it's like our last investment that we made. We buy commercial real estate, we buy apartment complexes, we raise millions of dollars for deals. One of the last deals was, $5-6 million. We have it, at quote unquote risk. And as you're going into this deal, there are so many things that we're thinking about in terms of, well, what happens if it goes wrong? Well, what happens if we lose somebody's money? Well, what happens if, our due diligence wasn't right? All these things. And the way you said it, worrying has no value. You're practicing fear in advance. And that's exactly, the enemy of like critical thinking. I need to be able to critically think about what's going on, be able to look at some data and metrics and, analyze the best possible scenario, not worrying or having fear in advance of it. So that obstacle that they're going to come, if anybody's in our shoes, you kind of know this, where, under due diligence, you have something under contract, you have some hard earnest money, and maybe you're just an investor in, looking to place your next $1 million. In either case, there are obstacles that will come up in the moment before you have to make that decision. That's an opportunity. What I'm hearing from you, Phil, right, is like, well, let's look at it objectively. Let's put my fear, my emotional part of it down for a second, and let's just look at it, face value. This is an obstacle. It will stop other people from moving forward. If I figure out how to win or, effectively maneuver around this obstacle, I can be the winner when somebody else may stop there. So that's kind of how I sum it up. For me, at least, a simpleton. How would you say that was that, kind of?
Abel, you're exactly right.
Okay,
let me give you another phrase to write down.
Please.
Developing your emotional intelligence will enable you to outcarry your competition. Developing your emotional intelligence will enable you to outcarry your competition. It will enable you to develop deeper, more trusted advisor relationships, which will translate into better results that require less effort, and you'll have more fun in the process.
Got it. Yeah.
See, when you develop your emotional intelligence, you radiate trustability. When you lack emotional intelligence, you radiate fear and untrustability. So there's something called, you may have heard of this, there's something called the trust economy that's actually growing much faster than the traditional economy. It's currently estimated at over $10 trillion a year. And that what it is simply is that because of the accelerating rate of change, people can't keep up. So they're relying more and more on the people they trust, their network of trusted advisors, to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if your walls are up, if you lack emotional intelligence, if you're being ruled by your fear, you're radiating untrustability,
Yeah.
which is going to make your ability to develop trusting relationships that much harder. The
Yeah.
reality is that your network of trusted advisors is the most valuable asset you have as an individual or as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree, 100%. And you bring some good points for other people that are trying to figure out how to invest or how to build wealth. Like the 1%, because when I graduated, I'll say this, from doing investments on my own with me and my wife, rather us together. When we started doing bigger deals, bigger investments, investing into multi-million-dollar projects versus hundreds of thousands of dollars, we quickly realized there's no way we can get this done without the right team, the network of people. And as we met other people that were having success in this area, we had to build some of that trust. And if we're, at the beginning, now that I think about it versus today, we have much different network connections, much different team members, higher level, higher net worth, higher liquidity, higher experience. They play a different game when it comes to investing versus somebody trying to make $1 million versus someone who already has 50 or 100 million and they're trying to preserve and grow it. And so in that perspective, I've got to build deeper relationships, more meaningful ones. And I need to, if I do that, there's that trust factor, which allows somebody to say, you know what, we should work together. I like you, you like me. Let's go.
And the only way
you get there.
The only way you can do that is by investing in the development of your emotional intelligence. That's why betting on yourself by developing your emotional intelligence is the strategically best thing you can possibly do to position yourself for success in every area of your life. Let me just tell you what.
You mentioned this earlier in our kind of pre-conversation, and I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. Why is betting on yourself for emotional intelligence one of the best possible investments of my time, resources, energy? Why is that?
Because of this tsunami of change we're facing. See, we're only conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. Let that sink in a little bit.
Oh, shit.
We're only actually conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. The rest of the time, we're relying on our unconscious habits to generate our behavior and our results. So what really that means is that in a lot of respects, we're still behaving like Neanderthals, bouncing off of each other. And in order to develop higher levels of better results, You have to raise your level of consciousness. You cannot get better results than your current level of consciousness. It is impossible. So whatever results you're getting in your life, in your business, in your personal life, is a reflection of your current level of consciousness about what's going on in you and around you. In order to get better results, you have to raise your level of consciousness, which comes about as a result of developing your emotional intelligence. And without getting too far into this to freak out your listeners, there's an underlying energy physics to what I'm saying that I've been proving over the last 21 years all over the world that makes the results of developing your emotional intelligence as predictable and quantifiable as any physical science. So again, I want to stress that the development of your emotional intelligence is the best thing you can do to ensure your success. And as the rate of change continues to accelerate exponentially, what I'm saying to you today is going to get proven over and over and over and over again. Emotional intelligence isn't a solution to the challenges we face. It is the only solution to the challenges we face. And the sooner people start to bet on themselves by developing their emotional intelligence, the better results you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's fun, but I'll tell you, it's awfully hard work. And I want to be open and honest about that. It's like Navy SEAL training for emotions. There's significant both biological and sociological resistance we have to change. And you can't develop your emotional intelligence by having a conversation like the one we're having here, or by reading a book, or by watching a video. The development of emotional intelligence is not an intellectual process. It is an experiential process. So let me give you a numerical example of the difference between intellectual intelligence and emotional intelligence. Think of intellectual, by the way, this is where our educational system and our employment system has failed us dramatically. They have completely failed to prepare us for the tsunami of change we're facing. But think of intellectual intelligence as getting $10,000 a day for 31 days. So at the end of 31 days, you've got $310,000. Now think of emotional intelligence as getting a penny that doubles in value every day. At the end of 31 days, you've got $10.7 million. At the end of 40 days, you've got over $5 billion. At the end of 50 days, you've got over $5 trillion. So the point is, it doesn't take any more effort to go from day 30 to day 31 than it did to go from day 1 to day 2. But it's a journey. It's an awareness building process. It's a consciousness building process. And the ROI never ends. It keeps increasing exponentially. You see, intellectual intelligence is largely genetic. Our ability to do intellectual labor is inherited. If you have 160 IQ, your parents had a high IQ, their parents had a high IQ, and you inherited it. So not everybody can have a high IQ, but anybody can develop their emotional intelligence. Anybody. And the ROI in developing that intelligence is massive. It's remarkable.
Yeah. Well, real quick on this, Phil. So something I probably should have mentioned, but if you're still listening now towards the end of our show, you'll know this, and maybe cause you a little pause and rewind on the show to some of the nuggets that Phil is dropping because he's actually had career revenue of $1.5 billion. So let me say that again, career revenue of $1.5 billion. So I know there's some people that would hear the show and they go, I'm just need to get to work. Forget about emotional intelligence. I'm going to call more people or make more, deals happen or try to get a bigger percentage. This is kind of foofy and yada, yada, yada. For those that, just quite don't, believe in it, I'm going to hit push pause, hit rewind, do some research on your own time. We don't want to sell you on that part of it. It's not worth the time. But for the people that get it, they're like, okay, I'm in. I understand. Can you give them an exercise or an activity or something that would help them become a better investor today? I'm leaving the show. I'm like, you know what? Everything they said makes sense. I have this next deal on my plate. It's $50 million. What's an activity or some kind of, action item they can take today to say, you know what? Let me settle myself down, take the fear and the worry and the emotion out of it, and start to eliminate some stress.
Here's a really easy one.
Okay.
Guaranteed to work.
No, that's perfect. I love
Matter
it.
of fact, it's been working for tens of thousands of years.
There you go.
Focus on your breathing. I want you to close your eyes right now. And I want you to take 5 slow, deep breaths. I want you to breathe in slowly through your nose and blow it out slowly through your mouth. And I want you to focus on that. And I want you to do it 5 times. Breathe in slowly through your nose and blow it out slowly through your mouth. See, when you're focusing on your breathing, it's impossible to feel anxiety. It's impossible to think when you're focusing on your breathing. See, what's actually happening is a part of our brain called the amygdala that never wants us to be in the present moment. It wants us to always be focused on some potentially better future moment or some past moment, but it never wants us to be in the present moment. So here's a little nugget. The person most present in this moment is most influential. The person most present in the moment is most influential. So by focusing on your breathing, that will take you out of your anxiety and bring you into the present moment. And that will give you the greatest opportunity for success in this moment. Works all the time. See, most people are thinking about, they want to get through the present moment to get to some potential better future moment. There is no future moment. There will never be a future moment. When it gets here, it'll just simply be the present moment. All there will ever be is the present moment. And most people are very hardly conscious in the present moment because they're focused on some potentially better future moment or some past moment, but they're not in the present moment. So they're robbing themselves of the ability to be creative and to look for the opportunity in the present moment.
The person most present in the moment is the most influential. All we're ever going to have are present moments. Don't live in the future. It'll never come.
There is no
Let's make
future.
the best decision we can make today for our investing journey. I'm with it.
Yep. So our ego wants us to be, our ego wants to feel less than or greater than, but it never wants us to feel equal to. So it's robbing us of the energy we need to make better choices by trying to pull us out of the present moment.
Yeah.
So this simple exercise of focusing on your breathing stops you from thinking, stops you from creating the anxiety that blinds you to the reality of the present moment.
Yes, sir. All right, Phil, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate the moment. Thank you, brother. It's like I got to get a moment of bringing myself back to the present right now. I mean, literally, I'm like, okay, great. I feel like I can attack the day in a different mentality. I'm going to take a few more minutes. I know you have to go, so let me do this first. If somebody's going to reach out to you, wants to, get in your world, get some coaching, read one of the 6 to 8 books that are out there on Amazon, consume some of the Servant Warrior Leader, and they looked at your last book and they're like, oh man, I need to connect with Phil. I need to hire him as a coach. I need to get in his world, one or the other. What's the best place to go to do so? And who do you want to reach out to, and how should they?
I'm going to give you right this very second a link to my Zoom calendar, and anybody can jump on that calendar, and I'd be happy to chat with them.
And you can, if we will say it out loud too, so we can capture it on the audio, and then we'll put it in the show notes as well, Phil.
Yeah, it's Calendly. Calendly, you can see it there in the show notes.
Yeah, calendly.com/MBL coach /chat with Phil. We'll put this in the show notes, but I just want to make sure to say it out loud too.
Sure.
And who do you want to reach out to you, Phil?
Anybody that has an urgent desire for better results than they're currently getting. If they're motivated to get better results than they're currently getting, I can help them do that.
All right, that's awesome. Well, Phil, I sincerely appreciate your time. Now looking back on our few moments, I was like, there's so many other questions that came to mind, Phil, but we'll have to wait till another time, and want to be respectful of yours, brother. I just appreciate it so much, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I think you're going to make you're going to make a few people a few more $1 million, literally just with the few nuggets that you've had here, at least across the way. So thank you very much for your time.
Abel, it's a pleasure, and thank you for the work you're doing.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and have a good day.